What's up, folks? Dr. Mike Axler here, professor of exercise science, PhD in applied human physiology, and 60 plus time marathoner and ultramarathoner and performance coach. Most people think that metabolism slows down as we age. You can hear your parents or grandparents saying things like, "Oh, my metabolism has slowed down. That's why I've put on so much weight." And they think that metabolism slows down because of age, but that's not really the whole truth. See, we do gradually have a decrease in metabolic rate as we age, but that's not because of age specifically, it's because of muscle mass loss. We know that we lose muscle as we age, and the point of today's video is to detail why that happens. So one important thing to note is that metabolism doesn't just slow down with age, it also changes. So let me explain. Your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR, which is a measure of the amount of calories that you burn throughout the day, does decrease or decline around 1 to 2% per decade after the age of 30, which is kind of scary because I just turned 30. And the main driver of this, again, is not age specifically. It's going to be the loss of lean mass or skeletal muscle mass that happens as we age. So it doesn't matter if you're 40 years old and you have more muscle mass than someone who is 30 years old, your metabolic rate is going to be higher for the 40-year-old than the 30-year-old because they have more muscle mass. But in general, we do tend to lose muscle mass as we age. So suffices to say from this is that our lifestyle choices vis-a-vis, do we exercise, do we eat enough protein, that is going to greatly outweigh the amount of muscle mass we have more than the amount of birthday candles in your cake, if that kind of helps. So the great thing about muscle is that muscle, specifically skeletal muscle, everything from like you blinking your eyes to you moving your mouth to your biceps, triceps, quads, things like that, your skeletal muscle burns 3 to 4 times more calories at rest than does body fat. So it is very metabolically advantageous to have skeletal muscle, such that every pound of muscle burns around 6 to 10 kilocalories per day. So the more muscle mass you have, the more calories you burn at rest, which can also decrease the amount of body fat you carry. Further, on why I should really sell you the idea on building muscle, is that having more muscle also equates to a larger glucose reservoir, or a glucose bank account, so to speak. We know that after having a meal, your blood sugar is going to rise. So your blood sugar, or your blood glucose, will rise. And it has to have a place to go. And a lot of people, if they don't have a ton of muscle mass, it goes right into their bellies, or right into like their thighs, right? It goes right into the adipose tissue, and it's carried as body fat. So it goes from glycogen to body fat, and we don't want that. However, if we have muscle mass, all that glucose goes into the muscles, and it can be used for later as glycogen for storage, and it doesn't go as body fat. So the more muscle mass we have, the more storage space we have for glucose, and the less likely we are to become diabetic. So all of this is to say, if we're going to say that muscle is metabolic machinery, is that when we have more skeletal muscle mass, we have a higher resting energy expenditure, so we can burn off more calories at rest. We have improved carbohydrate metabolism, so we're less likely to become diabetic, and we have much better blood glucose control. So now that we've detailed what happens to muscle mass as we age and why it's important to have muscle mass, let's now talk about why we lose muscle as we age. And this really deals with both sarcopenia and hormonal shifts. Sarcopenia, if you've heard this term before, is the gradual loss of muscle mass that occurs as we age. And we discussed how it does begin around the age of 30, but it becomes to but it happens a lot quicker after the age of 40. So muscle mass does begin to decline around 1% after the age of 40. And what's more is that strength, so the ability to push, pull, and press an absolute amount, can drop 2 to 3% per year, so even sharper decline. And some of the causes of this muscle mass and this muscular strength is inactivity, so not doing your cardio, not doing your lifting, low protein intake, because most people don't eat enough protein. I might be preaching to the choir right now because I feel like anyone watching this video probably down with the protein shakes. And the last one's going to be hormonal shifts. So men and women do lose a ton of testosterone and growth hormone as we age, and women also lose out on a lot of estrogen and progesterone, especially postmenopausal women. So it's really going to be the interplay of inactivity, hormonal shifts, and low protein intake, which is going to play into people losing more and more and more muscle, specifically after the age of 40. And one rule of thumb that I like to give to my students, my clients, even my family, is that if you're not building muscle after the age of 40, then by definition, you're losing muscle after the age of 40. So it's important to talk about these things. So now that we've discussed this, we can then go on to how to build muscle after age 40. Let's now solve the problem, so to speak. So we know that going to the gym and resistance training is immensely important. I think that everyone knows that. And more specifically, around 2 to 4 times per week. And the main thing is just to focus on compound movements. I love that a lot of gyms set up their machines in such a way that you can go upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body, and they're all in like this line. And it'll say something like a 30 to 60 minute circuit training. And you know what? I follow those things too. I want to hit like chest, and I hit back, and then I hit legs, and then I hit some core, and I hit some biceps and triceps, and just go down the line one by one by one by one. But if you're really trying to save time, just focusing on the compound movements, like a nice press, a pull, a squat, a deadlift is going to be awesome. Because when we do these compound movements, we are neuromuscularly figuring out how to train the different muscle groups together to become more balanced, to have better postural stability, and just to be stronger and get bigger, right? That's number one. Get into the gym 2 to 4 times a week, hit the machines, dumbbells, barbells, all the good stuff. Next, focus on progressive overload and focus on your recovery. We know that when we go into the gym, we focus on progressive overload. We're going to do 1 or 2 more reps each week from workout to workout, or we're going to add another 5 pounds on the bar, or 10 pounds, or just do a little more volume. That is immensely important for long-term sustained growth. And on that last point, focusing on rest and recovery. Going to the gym 2 to 4 times a week works. It's awesome. You don't have to go 2 to 4 times a day, just 2 to 4 times a week, and making sure to rest and recover in between each session. Alrighty, we've talked about how training is going to be the stimulus for muscle growth. But now let's support this on the recovery end of things by talking about what to eat. And I think this is always like the hot topic, right? So research suggests eating around 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per body weight per day is more than sufficient to add muscular hypertrophy and muscular strength. But there is a whole lot of research out there to support people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s can eat upwards of a pound 1 gram per pound per day, or even a little bit more than that, just to put on muscle. And because with the older folks, their hormonal milieu is not on their side, so testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, growth hormone is not on their side, doing a little bit more on the way of eating complete proteins, so things like lean meats, lean poultry, lean dairy, soy, lentils, beans, eggs, egg whites, ad infinitum. That can really, really, really help the older folks, 60s, 70s, and 80s. If you're 60, 70, 80, I apologize, but you're an old folk. It can really, really, really help you not only maintain your muscular strength and your muscle mass, but also add to it. So main thing here, because I like to summarize each little section, is that if you're going to train very, very diligently and very, very hard, you're going to need to support that specifically with your complete protein sources from a nice hearty mix of animal proteins and or plant proteins. Alrighty, and then a little bonus here, which I thought I'd throw in, is that there's a lot being thrown around about mitochondria these days. If you remember from the last video, we talked about how the mitochondria are the engines or the powerhouses of the cell, going back to the Bill Nye days. Our skeletal muscle is very mitochondria dense. So there's a ton of mitochondria in our muscles, and that should make sense. Our muscles have to move around to be very, very, very strong. So we need to have engines for that. And what ends up happening is that when we strength train and we get stronger and build bigger muscles, we also build up more mitochondria, called mitochondrial biogenesis, which we talked about in the last video. We also know that mitochondria, more efficient and more amounts or more voluminous mitochondria, are needed for increases in VO2 max. VO2 max is a predictor of longevity. VO2 max is answering the question of, during cardiovascular exercise, can our heart and our lungs shuttle fresh oxygen to support our exercising muscles and carry away carbon dioxide and other metabolic waste products? With a more high VO2 max, we become very, very, very efficient. With a low VO2 max, we're not efficient. So if you want a better VO2 max, you want to be healthier, you want to live longer, aerobic train and strength train. So do your cardio and do your weights, and you will live longer and better. Alrighty, so real talk. As I said before, even 60, 70, 80-year-olds can grow a sufficient amount of muscle, and there's tons of research to support this. I'm sure a lot of you out there watching have had parents or grandparents go to like rehab facilities when they get older, and there's always going to be these PTs there, and there's these OTs who make them exercise a couple of times per day. We need to move, we need to be agile, we need to be strong. And with regard for muscle, just as the saying goes, with the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now, same thing too can be said with regard for strength training. The best time to begin strength training was 5, 10, 20 years ago, but the second best time is right this second. I'm going to go to the gym right after I make this video. And with regard for the older folks, and I didn't even talk about this, and I'll talk about this in future videos, is that strength training can just increase your activities of daily living, so your ADLs. I know my parents getting up into their 60s, and I'm focused on them not having osteoporosis, not like bending over and having spinal stenosis, not having nerve pain from like collapsed discs and things like that. So when we build up muscle, we just have better posture. We're able to walk around, be able to do our activities of daily living much, much better. So having muscle is incredibly, incredibly important as we age. In summary from today's video, you can control much, much more than you think. And we're going to need muscle, and a whole lot of it, to not only stay strong for now, but stay strong and mobile and independent and healthy for the long term. So I do want to thank you for watching this video. If you did, please share it with a friend who does not lift weights, as they probably need to see this. Please also subscribe to this, my Substack, and my Instagram, so you will not miss a beat with regard for all of our exercise science and nutrition advice. And I will see you all in the next episode.